Nature doesn't always follow the rules we expect. Beyond the landmarks everyone knows, there are places on this planet that look more like science fiction than reality, formed by time, pressure, and forces we barely understand. In this video, we're diving into some of the strangest landscapes Earth has to offer, places that feel unreal, impossible, and sometimes even unsettling. Let's begin. When you think of an amazing natural wonder, the Grand Canyon maybe or Mount Everest may come to mind. But there's many lesser-known natural wonders that are also pretty cool. So for today's video, I'm counting down the 15 weirdest natural wonders. Starting with number 15, the Danakil Depression. It's located between Ethiopia and Eritrea. The Danakil Depression is at the triple junction of three tectonic plates. And for the past 20 million years, the African plate has been slowly splitting from the other two. This has caused the area to become very volcanically active. And while tours are often expensive, it is possible to be guided through the 260-kilometer-long bowl. While the daily average temperature of about 34 degrees Celsius is pretty damn hot, all the colorful thermal pools and volcanoes make that trip totally worth it. Number 14, the Marble Cathedral. While St. Peter's may be beautiful, the world's coolest cathedral was made not by hand, but by the elements. Carved into the Chilean side of the Patagonian Andes, it's a sea cave that was formed by 6,000 years of waves from a remote glacial lake. It's only really accessible by boat. The cavern walls reflect the bright blue waters, and as a result, it's best to go early in the morning, as it's then that the lighting is ideal and allows for the best possible pictures to be taken. Number 13, the Pulpit Rock. Located in southern Norway, Pulpit Rock is a rock that leads to a cliff steeply dropping 600 meters to the water down below. Despite these dangers, the Norwegian government has refused to install any fencing around it in a bid to preserve the site's natural beauty, making it a stunning spot. However, if you want to visit, you better be prepared to hike. After all, you have to journey up a 7-kilometer-long footpath in order to get there. However, many tourists will tell you that long trek is totally worth it. Number 12, Lake Hillier. Better known as the Pink Lake, Lake Hillier is, against all odds, colored completely naturally. Located on Australia's Middle Island in the Southern Ocean, scientists are not entirely sure why the lake is pink. However, most believe that this pinkness is caused by the presence of red algae and microorganisms known as Dunaliella salina. While this means that going for a dip is completely safe, you may have a hard time doing so. After all, it's illegal to enter the lake without prior government permission. As a result, if you want to visit, I'd suggest booking a helicopter ride so you can see it from above. Number 11, the Cave of Crystals. Buried about 300 meters below Mexico's Nika Mountain, the Cave of the Crystals was discovered by miners in April of 2000. Nicknamed the Sistine Chapel of Crystals, it's filled with massive milky white translucent gypsum beams. They first formed about 500,000 years ago, but because they've been left in near-perfect conditions, they've been growing ever since, making them the subject of scientific study. Unfortunately, since the temperature of the cave is about 50 degrees Celsius and the humidity ranges from 90 to 100%, human beings cannot survive inside for longer than 2 hours. As a result, no tourists are allowed inside anymore, making it a beautiful yet inaccessible addition to this list. Number 10, the Gocta Waterfalls. On a trip to Peru, most tourists will go to major areas such as Lima, Cusco, and Machu Picchu. However, one natural wonder that's often missed is the Gocta Waterfalls. It's located in the far less traveled north of the country. These waterfalls have been known about by the inhabitants of the village of Cocachimba since at least the 1950s. After all, their town is located practically right beneath it. They knew it as Gocta after the sound made by the howler monkeys in the region, although their knowledge of it didn't lead to outside discovery. Weirdly enough, those in this remote village mostly avoided the waterfall and failed to talk about it. The reasons for this are somewhat unclear, although it seems to be related to superstition surrounding its alleged connection to the curse of a beautiful blonde mermaid. In any case, the villagers simply allowed it to blend into the background of their daily life until a certain Stegen Siemendorf showed up. Siemendorf is a German economist who was working on a wastewater project in the area. In the middle of his work term, he took a break to go hiking in Peru's Utacamba Valley in search of one of the region's abundant pre-Incan ruins. When he crossed into a blind ravine, he suddenly came across the towering two-tiered waterfall. Following March, he returned to the site with measuring equipment, and after conducting some calculations, discovered that Gokta was 770 meters tall, and by extension, somewhere between the 3rd and 16th tallest waterfall in the world, depending on how you calculate it. In any case, while the falls are rather remote, a small tourist industry has been set up to welcome visitors hoping to get a glimpse, so if you want to travel through Peru and go down the path less traveled, I'd suggest taking a trip to this incredible natural wonder. Number 9. The Xilin Forest. While most forests are green and full of trees, the Xilin Forest is on the grayer side. That's because unlike its leafy counterparts, it's entirely made out of rocks. Consisting of thousands of rocks that are densely packed together, Xilin spans across an area of over 300 square kilometers. The geological record suggests that it formed about 270 million years ago, although it always wasn't so rocky. At this point in time, it was covered in a shallow sea, and it was thanks to the moving water in this sea that the sandstone overlaid with limestone and it was formed. Over time, the region lifted itself above water level and the growing stones created a large rocky outcrop. Over time, these exposed rocks were subjected to wind, running water, seismic activity, and all these forces chipped away at the limestone pillars. The end result was a forest of pillars with very unique forms and shapes, alongside a cool geological feature known as karst caves, underground rivers, and waterfalls. While every stone within Xilin is unique, none have quite as much mystique as the Ashima stone. You see, legend has it that this stone is related to a beautiful Sani girl named Ashima. The story goes that after being told that she wasn't allowed to marry the man she loved, she ran to the Xilin forest and instead decided to turn into a stone. In order to recognize this tragedy, the local Sani people still go into the Xilin forest every June 24th in order to participate in the annual Torch Festival. This Torch Festival features everything from wrestling to bullfighting, and lighting up this otherwise gray stone-cold forest. It's also worth noting that the forest has become more and more popular in recent years. While this has made it quite busy, the increased development has also made it accessible. Nowadays, it can easily be reached by road or by tram, and it's organized into 8 separate sections for ease of access. Number 8. The Blood Falls. When you go on a cruise to Antarctica, you probably expect to see icebergs, penguins, and research stations. With that being said, a bloody waterfall is probably not on your radar, yet that's exactly what you'll see if you swing by the Taylor Glacier. Located in Antarctica's famous McMurdo Dry Valleys, geologists first discovered this 5-story frozen waterfall back in 1911. At the time, they simply assumed that the strange red color came from a species of algae. However, the reality is that its origins are far more spectacular. It turns out that roughly 2 million years ago, a small body of water which contained an ancient community of microbes was trapped beneath the Taylor Glacier. Because a 400-meter thick layer of ice froze over it, the microbes have been unable to leave and have, as a result, remained isolated inside what amounts to a natural time capsule. Evolving in complete isolation, their existence was marked by their environment. With no light, no free oxygen, and very little heat, they essentially evolved into a primordial ooze. Since the trapped lake has a very high salinity, the water doesn't freeze, and because the water is high in sulfite ions, it's got enough energy to sustain the microbes. Additionally, the high presence of iron in the water makes it a bright red color, so when it escapes the glacial lake and flows out of the waterfall, it looks a lot like blood coming out of an iceberg. Now it is worth mentioning that beyond simply looking awesome, the Blood Falls also has implications for science at large. After all, the fact that it exists at all shows that life can exist in the most extreme conditions on Earth. This could have implications surrounding our understanding of the development of life during Earth's ice ages. However, as tempting as it may be to make the connection, the Blood Falls does not prove that life could exist on other planets with similar environments and similar bodies of frozen water. This is because the actual cause of life on another planet would have to be completely different than on Earth. If you'd like to visit here, though, you can get to the falls by helicopter from McMurdo Station or Scott Base. If you'd rather not see it from above, you can also see it from closer to sea level on a cruise ship in the Ross Sea. Moving on to number 7, the Waitomo Glowworm Caves. While worms aren't the main attraction at most natural sites, the Waitomo Glowworm Caves put those wriggly creatures into the spotlight. Located in New Zealand, the cave was first discovered by the local Maori indigenous peoples in the late 1700s. However, it was in 1884 that they were first revealed to the outside world. That's because it was in this year that the English surveyors Fred Mace and Lawrence Coussin were shown the entrance by a local Maori chief, and in 1887, they conducted a series of thorough explorations. Entering on a tiny raft from an above-ground stream, they lit their candles and descended into the depths. They were soon amazed when, through the darkness, they noticed star-like lights scattered across the cave. These lights were caused by a species of glowworm. It should be noted that they aren't worms in the traditional sense. Rather, they are larvae of the fungus gnat, which cling to the rock walls and hunt with long strings of sticky mucus. Worms are not. Because of their bioluminescence, they light up the cave with a bluish-green light, making for an incredible sight. As you might imagine, these glowworms piqued the curiosity of the explorers, and the two Englishmen would return many times to explore further. During this time period, the Maori chief Tenereo would go on an independent trip, find a land entrance into the cave. In 1889, Tenereo and his wife began leading tours into the cave through this entrance, and to date, it's the primary way to get in and out of it. Beyond the glowworms, it's also worth noting that the cave itself is pretty impressive in its own right. The limestone in the cave was formed about 30 million years ago when the cave was still under the ocean, and today, it consists of the composed fossilized remains of corals, seashells, fish skeletons, and many other small marine organisms. Over the millions of years, these fossilized rocks have been layered upon each other and compressed to create limestone, and at points, this layer of rock is over 200 meters thick. If you'd like to visit the area for yourself, you can get a guided tour for a relatively reasonable price of about $45. It's a great bucket list item if you're considering a trip to New Zealand. Number 6. Spider Rock. The Grand Canyon is Arizona's most famous canyon by a long shot. However, if you're willing to venture a little off the beaten path, you can see a canyon that is a real treat. Known as the Canyon de Shelly, it's located about 4 hours away from its larger cousin, although by many accounts, it provides more bang for your buck. Beyond having beautiful nature to see, it's been inhabited by the Navajo people for centuries, and it's filled with cliff dwellings, rock art panels, and other archaeological remains. Yet, the most impressive thing by far is the one and only Spider Rock. Rising nearly 230 meters above the ground, it seems to be a rather strange outcrop in the middle of an otherwise flat canyon. However, its existence can be explained by erosion. You see, long ago, Spider Rock was connected to the top of the canyon by, well, more rock. Over the years, hill slope and stream erosion worked away at different parts of the ridge, eventually breaking it apart and leaving Spider Rock isolated. As you might imagine, the local Navajo nations place a lot of significance in this rock. According to the Navajo, Spider Rock isn't just a rock, but it's a home to a deity known as Spider Woman. To the Navajo, Spider Woman was a source for good. After all, she's the one who gave the deity's monster slayer and child born of water the ability to reach the sun god. This was important because the sun god then taught them how to destroy all the earth's monsters so the Navajo could live on their lands. After this process was complete, Spider Woman then decided to make Spider Rock her home, and it was not only a beautiful spot, but also the perfect place to watch over and protect the Navajo. Yet, while Spider Woman would sometimes get angry, after all, the Navajo would warn misbehaving children that Spider Woman might use her webs to take them inside Spider Rock and eat them. All in all, she's a very well-respected figure. In any case, if you'd like to visit Spider Rock today, you'll have to enlist in either a park ranger or a Navajo guide, and in doing so, one of the most popular methods of transport is to go on horseback. And while this all makes getting to Spider Rock quite a process, by most accounts, it's totally worth it. Number 5. Precariously balanced rocks. While most of the wonders on this list can only be really enjoyed by traveling to a location, precariously balanced rocks can be found across the planet. They're known as PBRs for short, and they've got nothing to do with the brand of subpar beer with the same name. Rather, they're by definition large rocks balancing on top of smaller rocks. Notable examples can be found in vastly different areas. For example, in Finland, there's a 7-meter-long boulder known as the Kumakivi that lies on a convex bedrock. While this PBR is mostly untouched, out in Myanmar, there's a far more dressed-up example known as the Kyakuseo Pagoda, perched on the edge of a cliff. It's covered in gold leaf, has a pagoded roof, and is famous for being a pilgrimage site for Buddhists. Yet, perhaps the most fascinating place to see PBRs is Goblin Valley State Park in Utah. It's filled with thousands of them. They're known by locals as hoodoos, and are, in essence, mushroom-shaped rock pinnacles that are often several meters tall. Now, not all PBRs are made equal. Some were created thousands of years ago when retreating glaciers placed them where they are today. In other instances, it's erosion that can be credited with their strange balancing act, and some are also regular rocks in disguise. After all, while many PBRs may look like they're caught in a dangerous balancing act, some are in fact connected internally by a slim spine of rock, making them far sturdier than they appear to be. Now, beyond being pretty, PBRs are also important due to their scientific value. Their crazy positions mean that they inevitably will fall at some point due to either erosion, changes in weight distribution, an earthquake, or other natural disaster. As a result, the fact that one exists at all tells the scientists that their location has not experienced a major disturbance event for as long as the rock formation has existed. This can help these scientists determine other facts about the area's geography. There is, though, one pervading issue with PBRs that's often not nature, but humans that lead to their ultimate demise. That's because there are some people out there that think that pushing them over is entertainment, not realizing or caring that this has implications on scientific research. And while jail sentences can be imposed if people are caught doing it in the act, their location in rural areas makes enforcement pretty difficult. As a result, people pushing over PBRs will likely continue to be a problem for years, making it all the more important that if you do go to visit some, please do it before it's too late and don't push them over. Number 4. The Chocolate Hills. In recent years, the Philippines has become a popular spot for beach enthusiasts, foodies, and those seeking some adventure. And there are thousands of cool things to see and do across these islands. The Chocolate Hills are a beautiful spot that's often overlooked. They're made up of a grand total of about 1,776 hills spread across an area of more than 50 kilometers. They've got nothing to do with chocolate or cacao plants, rather, they get their name from the grass, and while it's lush and green in the wet season, it turns brown and barren during the dry season, making the area look like lump after lump of chocolate. These hilly lumps are an impressive 30 to 50 meters in height, with the highest of them coming in at a whopping 120 meters. It's because of this that they've been proposed for inclusion in the UNESCO World Heritage List, and on my end, I say they deserve that title. However, despite being such a large part of the landscape, incredibly enough, the cause of their creation is still a mystery. One of the leading theories suggests that the area used to be covered in water, and that the hills are eroded formations of a type of marine limestone. Others contend that their creation was far more explosive. One popular theory suggests that the hills were created after an ancient volcano self-destructed and dispersed itself across the region. In fact, there's even a chance that tidal movements may have had a hand in their creation. Yet, the reality is that while the first theory sounding erosion is most widely accepted, we still don't know for sure. It's also worth mentioning that in the past, there was some controversy around the hills. You see, before they were designated as a National Geological Monument, many of them were owned by private landowners, many of whom used them for either farming or mining operations. This meant that the declaration of protected status posed a threat to their profits, and for a time, armed militias formed to oppose government control of the area. However, these forces were eventually dealt with, and now the Chocolate Hills are a safe and incredible spot to visit on a tour through the Philippines. Number 3. The Lusco Caves. When it comes to human heritage, few places are quite as important or as mysterious as the Lusco Caves. These caves themselves were more or less forgotten for thousands of years. However, in 1940, they were discovered completely by chance. The story goes that on September 12 of that year, 18-year-old Marcel Revita was outside with his dog, Robot, when the dog investigated a hole left by an uprooted tree. This hole appeared to lead deep into the ground below, and after returning with a few friends, they began exploring. Originally, they entered through a 15-meter deep shaft that they might believe lead to a secret passage to the nearby Lusco Manor. However, to their surprise, the walls around them were covered with depictions of animals. As they moved through the caves, they began to name the galleries, with these including the so-called Hall of the Bulls, the passageway, the shaft, the nave, the apse, and the chamber of felines. They returned along with the Abbé Henri Breuil on September 21 of 1940, and he would in turn bring in experts to the caves to conduct thorough studies. In the following year, several in-depth studies of the caves were conducted, and in 1948, they were open to the public. It turns out that the caves are about 17,000 years old and depict many of the animals and realities that were seen and experienced by prehistoric humans. In fact, there are a grand total of nearly 6,000 figures on the walls, and for the most part, they were made using an early version of paint. Exactly why they were made is unclear, though, to date, theories such as paintings being a record of past hunting successes or a representation of a mystical ritual have all been suggested. However, what is clear is that these caves are of immense importance to human heritage. Unfortunately, many of the visitors who ventured into the caves didn't see it this way. After all, just 7 years after opening, the carbon dioxide, heat, and humidity produced by the daily visitors, many of whom smoked while walking through, had caused massive damage. In 1963, the caves were partially closed to the public in order to combat the fungi and lichens that had begun to infest the walls and destroy the paintings. By the early 2000s, infestations of mold had become commonplace, and the site has since been completely closed to the public. Now, while you can no longer visit the natural part of the cave, an extremely faithful reproduction has been built right beside it. This ensures that visitors can learn about the cave and see replicas of the art while not damaging what is already a quickly disappearing selection of cave art. Number 2. The Sun Dung Cave. While some caves may have a reputation for being dark, dank, and dingy, the Sun Dung Cave is anything but. It's located in central Vietnam. For millennia, it was a complete mystery to the outside world. However, in only 1991, that all changed when a local man by the name of Ho Con stumbled across it while searching for wood. He initially wanted to venture inside, but he was discouraged after hearing the sound of rushing water and strong wind at the entrance. Not thinking much of it, he returned home and over time forgot about its exact location. However, by chance, in 2008, 2 members of the British Cave Research Association were in the area and had a conversation with Ho Con. With his help, they were able to rediscover the entrance, and an expedition in 2009 revealed some incredible results. Untouched by human hands, Sun Dung turned out to be the world's largest natural cave. At a height of about 200 meters, a width of about 150 meters, and a length of about 9 kilometers, this 1.5 million square meter cavern is absolutely massive. For reference, it's large enough to easily fit an entire New York City block inside of it, including the skyscrapers. Well, in any case, it should come as little surprise that a cave as big as Sun Dung is full of natural wonders. You see, due to it being so large and cut off from the rest of the world, it's filled with jungles that have developed their own contained ecosystem. Thanks to millions of years of secluded evolution, it has its own endemic plants, monkeys, flying foxes, frogs, insects, and hares that are found nowhere else in the world. Yet the real showstopper here is the cave's geology. That's because it's home to a row of 70 to 90 meter long stalagmites. That makes them some of the largest on Earth, and the ones at Sun Dung Cave are so immense, they've been nicknamed the Great Wall of Vietnam. But if you'd like a tour, you'd better be willing to pay up. You see, the cave is limited to just 1,000 visitors per year, and to date, the Vietnamese government has given a monopoly on all travel to the cave to a company called Oxalis Adventures. At about $3,000 per ticket, the prices are pretty steep. However, for that price, you get to go on a guided 5-night and 6-day journey through the cave with many necessities, such as camping gear, boots, and food all being included. And while this massive monopoly may seem unfair, in many ways, having just one company administering the tourism in the caves helps with conservation and ensures that high-quality standards are met. Number 1. Sala de Uyuni. When you think of cool natural wonders, salt flats are probably not what first comes to mind. However, the 11,000 square kilometer Sala de Uyuni is the largest in the world, and it's a beautiful example of this incredible natural wonder. Located in southwestern Bolivia on the crest of the Andes, it is, in essence, a seemingly endless plain of hexagonal salt tiles that sports the occasional salt pyramid. Lying about 3,600 meters above sea level, their formation dates back to about 40,000 years ago. Now, according to the geologic record, at one point in time, almost all of southwest Bolivia was covered with a massive 120-meter deep salt lake. However, at around the 40,000-year mark, it essentially dried up, leaving behind a few meters of salt crust in its wake. During the dry season, between April and October, the salt plain is dry and walkable and resembles a science fiction movie. However, in the wet season, from November to March, the flats transform into a massive mirror as the water-covered ground acts as a reflective surface. Despite being a maximum of just about 50 centimeters deep, it almost perfectly mirrors the sky and allows visitors to feel as though they're walking through the clouds. Beyond being pretty, though, what makes this place even cooler is that, against all odds, what should be a sparse landscape is teeming with life. Pink flamingos, ancient cacti, and rare hummingbirds all live in the area, as during the rainy season the lake is apparently teeming with plankton too. It's also worth noting that if you visit here, you can stay at a quirky little hotel that's quite naturally made out of salt. Created from salt bricks held together with salt mortar, the hotel and everything inside it, including the chairs and tables, are made from this white substance. While this means that it's got no electricity and little in the way of amenities, it is a cool vibe. Utter silence and all-encompassing austere beauty makes it an incredible place to relax. In any case, if you do want to visit, most people come from either the small Bolivian town of Uyuni, which is about 10 hours away from the capital city of La Paz, the Bolivian town of Tupiza, or if you're across the border from San Pedro de Atacama in Chile. And while all have their pros and cons, what is guaranteed is that you'll have a great time at Uyuni once you get there. As an interesting side note, it's also worth mentioning that Sala de Uyuni has been on the cutting edge of the green revolution. Turns out that the area has large quantities of lithium, which is a substance that's vital for the creation of new electric batteries, and by extension, new technologies. To date, the mine is one of the largest lithium mines in Bolivia, and given the high price of the material, it may make sense for opportunities to develop Sala de Uyuni to continue, so long as they don't detract too much from its ecological function or its natural beauty. From glowing caves to salt deserts that turn into mirrors, Earth never stops proving how unpredictable it can be. These places remind us that the planet is still full of surprises, many of them hidden far from the usual tourist paths.